Denzel Washington. What if the role that finally won him an Oscar was the one everyone told him not to take? Picture this. A man spends almost 20 years building a reputation as the most trustworthy face in Hollywood. Every studio wants him for the noble cop, the wise coach, the steady hero you'd trust with your kids. Then one day he says yes to playing a corrupt, manipulative, downright dangerous cop, the total opposite of everything audiences believed about him. That gamble didn't just work, it became one of the most iconic performances of his career. This is the story of Denzel Washington. Not just the awards, not just the movie posters, but the quiet discipline behind a man who kept picking the harder path when the easy one was sitting right there. Let's rewind. December 28, 1954, Mount Vernon, New York. Nobody in that house was thinking about red carpets. Denzel Washington's father, also named Denzel, was a Pentecostal preacher, and his mother, Lennis Washington, ran a beauty salon in the neighborhood and worked around the clock to keep the family afloat. This wasn't a house that handed out excuses. You worked, you showed respect, and you dealt with the consequences of your choices. Nobody was raising a movie star, they were raising a man. Then his parents split up while he was still a teenager, and that stable foundation got shaky fast. His dad wasn't around the house daily anymore, and his mom was carrying even more weight on her shoulders. Denzel has never turned this chapter into some dramatic sob story, but make no mistake, this was a rough patch, the kind where a kid can either find his footing or get swallowed up by the streets around him. And Denzel himself has admitted later in life that things could have gone a very different way. Here's the thing about his mother, though. She saw the danger before he did, and she made a call that, at the time, probably felt like betrayal to a teenage boy. She shipped him off to Oakland Military Academy. To him, it felt like punishment. Early mornings, strict rules, no friends, no comfort zone. But looking back on it as a grown man, he's called it one of the turning points of his life. Because military school didn't teach him how to act. It taught him something way more useful. Show up on time, take correction without whining, carry your responsibilities, and keep your cool when things get intense. That was his first real training ground, long before any camera ever pointed at him. After high school, he headed to Fordham University, initially chasing a degree in journalism, because, like most college kids, he genuinely had no clue what he wanted to do with his life. Then, almost as an afterthought, he signed up for a theater class just to knock out a requirement. And that's when everything shifted. Standing on that stage, he found a way to understand people, their fears, their failures, the messy decisions that make us human. His professors noticed the spark before he did, and they pushed him to keep going, which eventually led him to train at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. And here's the lesson that stage taught him early. Potential means nothing without preparation. You don't get rewarded for being talented. You get rewarded for doing the work, taking the notes, coming back after getting rejected, and being ready when your shot finally shows up. So by the late 70s, Denzel had picked acting as his path. But that decision came with zero guarantees. Hollywood at the time wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for black actors. Opportunities were thin, and plenty of talented performers never got the role that let them show what they could really do. Denzel walked into that world with no famous last name, no connections, nothing handed to him. Just audition after audition, show up prepared, give it everything you've got in a few short minutes, accept whatever answer comes back, then go do it again tomorrow. Not glamorous, just grinding. Then, in 1982, things started moving. He landed the role of Dr. Philip Chandler on the medical drama St. Elsewhere, and while it might have looked like just another TV gig at the time, it turned out to be the foundation for everything after. 6 seasons on that show gave him something most young actors never get: room to grow in front of an audience without needing to prove himself from scratch every single week. And the people around him noticed more than just his acting chops. He showed up early. He respected the crew. He treated a throwaway scene with the same seriousness as a big emotional one. Long before he became a household name, he had already built the one thing that matters most in this business: trust. From there, films started opening up. In Cry Freedom, he played South African activist Steve Biko with real dignity. Then, in 1989, came Glory, where he played Private Tripp, a formerly enslaved man, fighting in one of the first black regiments in the Civil War. It wasn't a performance built on big speeches, it was built on silence, pain, and control. That role earned him his first Oscar, for Best Supporting Actor. But here's the twist. Winning that award didn't magically erase the box Hollywood kept trying to put him in. Studios kept offering him the same type of role. The honorable guy, the moral compass, the leader with unshakable integrity. Great roles, sure, but they were slowly boxing him in. In 1992, Spike Lee handed him the role of a lifetime, Malcolm X. And Denzel didn't just play the man. He seemed to carry the entire weight of what that name means in American history. He got another Oscar nomination for it. The award went somewhere else that night, and for a lot of people watching, that loss stung harder than it should have. But Denzel didn't turn it into a headline. He went right back to work. Through the 90s, he kept stacking performances that showed just how deep his range went. Reuben "Hurricane" Carter, in The Hurricane, a boxer fighting to prove his innocence, and Coach Herman Boone, in Remember the Titans, leading a football team through racial division. Both roles tapped into something Denzel clearly understood, that competing isn't just about winning, it's about preparation and responsibility, and the pressure of being the one everyone's looking to for direction. By this point, audiences didn't just see him as a great actor. They saw him as the moral center of practically every story he stepped into. Which sounds like a great problem to have, right? Except it also became a trap. The stronger that good guy image got, the harder it was for anyone, including Denzel himself, maybe, to imagine him playing something dark. That's exactly why what happened next mattered so much. In the early 2000s, director Antoine Fuqua offered him the role of Alonzo Harris in Training Day, a corrupt, manipulative, terrifyingly charming detective who abuses his power and stays 2 steps ahead of everyone around him. Nothing about this guy resembled the honest men Denzel had spent 2 decades playing. Taking this role meant risking the very reputation that had made him one of the most respected actors alive, and he took it anyway. He didn't try to make Alonzo likable or soften the edges. He made him believable. Alonzo barely needed to raise his voice. He smiled while manipulating people, joked while ruining lives, stayed completely calm even as everything around him started collapsing. That kind of quiet menace hit harder than any shouting match could. When Training Day hit theaters in 2001, people immediately knew they were watching something different. Not Denzel abandoning who he was, but proving there was a whole other gear nobody had seen yet. Then came March 24, 2002, Oscar night at the Kodak Theater. That evening already carried extra weight before Best Actor was even announced, because earlier in the ceremony, Sidney Poitier had walked up to receive an honorary Academy Award. For Denzel, Poitier wasn't just a legend. He was the man who, back in 1964, became the first black actor to ever win Best Actor. 38 years passed before another black actor took home that same prize. So when the envelope opened, and Denzel's name was read, the applause in that room wasn't just about one performance. It carried the weight of everything in between. Cameras caught Poitier smiling as Denzel walked to the stage, and at the microphone, Denzel looked right at him and said something along the lines of always chasing him, always following in his footsteps, and that there was nothing he'd rather do. It wasn't a victory lap, it was gratitude. That night, Denzel Washington became only the second black man in Academy history to win Best Actor. It didn't erase the decades of silence before it, but it absolutely widened what people could picture happening after it. Now here's the part people forget. Winning that Oscar didn't make the next 20 years easy. If anything, it raised the stakes. He could have coasted. Bigger paychecks, safer roles, that comfortable prestige actor lane were all right there waiting for him. He didn't take it. Instead, he kept chasing roles that demanded something new. A grieving, guilt-ridden soldier in Man on Fire. A razor-sharp negotiator in Inside Man. A man wrestling with ambition and corruption in American Gangster. And a pilot hiding a painful secret in flight. None of these were safe. Every single one asked him to sit inside a flawed, complicated man and let the audience feel the weight of it. He also stepped behind the camera as a director, bringing stories like Fences to the screen. A project loaded with family wounds, pride, and love that hit far beyond the stage it came from. Even when he returned to more commercial territory with the Equalizer movies, he refused to play his character as some invincible action hero. He made him older, quieter, more watchful, a man whose stillness said just as much as his fists. Now, while all of this was happening on screen, there was a whole other story running quietly in the background: his family. In an industry that turns marriages into headlines, Denzel and his wife, Pauletta Washington, chose the opposite. They met while filming the TV movie Wilma in the late 70s, long before any of the fame arrived. They got married in 1983, back when Denzel was still building his career and still had no idea how far it would go. Over the years, they raised 4 kids through packed schedules, long stretches apart, and the kind of public attention that can crack even strong relationships. They've both been honest that this wasn't some fairy tale. It took patience, forgiveness, and a whole lot of choosing each other again and again. In 1995, they renewed their vows in South Africa in a ceremony led by Desmond Tutu. And it wasn't for the cameras. It was private, personal, just for them. Denzel has said more than once that people love to celebrate the person on stage and forget everyone who helped carry them there. That gratitude showed up clearly in 2019 when he received the AFI Life Achievement Award and used the moment to publicly thank Pauletta for the stability she gave their family. Their kids, including their oldest son, John David Washington, who first tried out professional football before turning to acting himself, were mostly kept out of the spotlight and encouraged to build their own paths instead of leaning on the family name. Underneath all of this, the roles, the awards, the family, sits something Denzel rarely talks about for show: his faith. It goes back to that house in Mount Vernon, to a father preaching from the pulpit, to values passed down long before fame was even a possibility. For him, faith was never a performance. It's tied to gratitude, humility, and the belief that you're responsible for more than just your talent. He's never pretended to be perfect. He's talked openly about doubt and regret, but his message has stayed consistent. Whether he's speaking to graduates or actors just starting out, ambition means nothing without character behind it. In late 2024, right before turning 70, he was baptized and received a minister's license at a church in Harlem. It made headlines because, well, it's Denzel, but it wasn't staged as some big reinvention. It read more like the next step on a road he'd been walking his whole life. As he's gotten older, Denzel hasn't tried to freeze himself in time, or keep playing the guy audiences knew in the 90s. He leaned into roles that actually matched where he was in life. Even in the Equalizer films, his character felt seasoned rather than superhuman. Someone who wins through patience and judgment, not just muscle. He also kept going back to the stage, which is honestly one of the boldest things an actor at his level can do. No editing, no do-overs, just you and the audience, and whatever happens that night. In 2021, he got major praise for his role in a stage production of Macbeth, playing the character not as some young warrior, but as an older man being slowly consumed by fear and ambition. Then in 2025, at 70 years old, he stepped onto a Broadway stage again in Othello, alongside Jake Gyllenhaal. Proof that comfort was never really the goal for him. So where does that leave his legacy? Honestly, it's bigger than trophies. Plenty of actors have won major awards. Way fewer stay respected across generations the way he has. By fellow actors, by younger performers, by audiences who grew up on his films, and audiences discovering him for the first time decades later. Viola Davis has praised his generosity on set, and Chadwick Boseman once revealed that Denzel quietly helped fund a summer acting program that gave him crucial training long before the world knew his name, something Denzel never once tried to turn into a headline about himself. By 2025, official recognition caught up with all of it. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, an honor first announced back in 2022, and later that year, the Cannes Film Festival gave him an honorary Palme d'Or. But by then, he really didn't need any of it to prove his place. His 2002 Oscar win for Training Day still stands out as the real turning point. Not because of the trophy itself, but because it proved he was willing to risk the image people loved him for, instead of spending the rest of his life protecting it. So here's the real takeaway. It was never just about talent. Plenty of talented people never make it, and plenty of famous people never last. What made the difference for Denzel Washington was preparation, discipline, humility, and the courage to keep growing even after the whole world had already called him great. A mother who made an unpopular decision because she was scared for her son's future. A college kid who wandered into a theater class almost by accident. A respected actor who risked everything to play a villain. Those choices, one after another, built something that outlasted any single award. If this story hit you in any way, if it made you think about your own path, your own discipline, your own harder choice waiting to be made, drop a comment and let me know which part stuck with you most. And if you want more stories like this one, make sure you're subscribed, because there's a lot more where this came from.